Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Reviews where today we're going to be checking out a remix of a track from an act named Britney Manson titled Fashion. This is the Cyrus Music Phonk remix, and if we switch over to here, it's going to be good to listen to a bit more funk. I've started to become more familiar with the genre. It'll be cool to see or hear Cyrus's take on this. We're going to listen through this track from start to finish on YouTube and we're going to hear what we think. Let's go.
Roll sound. Rolling.
Sound production, take one.
Action.
Sick panning there. Cool. Those low-key kind of basses there, the ominous nature to them with the chord note accents on the kick and the vocals like that are all parts of the genre, and that suits the vibe well. Just in case I forget, in the conclusion, the effect of the cameras with the sounds they were making before for that sort of quarter of that section there was dope. It was really great. It worked well with the video. And it's the effect of the vibrations as well. There's not often something you get in tracks to actually not just have the flickers of the camera swirling around the headphones before like you're being surrounded by the paparazzi, but also to have the call be something related to what's going on in the music. It's not too on the nose. I kind of dig it. The vocals swirl around the headphones alongside the bass, drums, and synths. And you can also stream it on Spotify. I'll have the social links in the description of this video and stuff like that. But yeah, YouTube and Spotify. Cyrus Fire. And sashay away, right? Cool. I dig that. I think that there's a lot to appreciate with this track. It's a great first impression to Cyrus's music, Cyrus Fire's music, and I think it's a nice reiteration or a remix of the original. We're going to talk about that more in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of this remix from Cyrus Music, this funk remix of this track from an act named Britney Manson titled Fashion. Now, What I think the original track is about, I think it's about their passion for fashion, rolling with all the high rollers, Marc Jacobs and stuff like that, talking about like the way they interact with each other, being a model, doing all that kind of fashion stuff, having a wardrobe stacked full of all the latest threads and everything like that. I think that's what the track is about. It's very chic. It's very cool. It's quite sophisticated, but in a way that's also approachable. It doesn't seem like it's trying to be too much of itself. It's cool, but it's not trying too hard. I think the vocals have been heavily modulated for this. I think they're very different to the original. You could tell they've sort of been synthesized a bit to sort of be a bit more sort of texturally similar to some of the synth ideas and to sit more neatly with a lot of the bass, drums, and foley that we have within the arrangement. With that said, it kind of reminds you kind of the Kesha vibes of the early 2010s there. We've got this kind of Cali girl kind of sort of vibe there with the way that we're sort of like talk singing there. We have a bit of auto-tune there potentially to sort of like make it work a bit better within the arrangement. But yeah, it's great. It's effectively, I think it's really well suited for funk as a genre. You've got those low tune kind of vocals at the start after the rolling production action thing at the start there, which are very sort of much a staple, kind of like as a percussive vocal thing, almost onomatopoeic there with the bass and drum intro there. But it was nice to be able to sort of pay homage to the track as much as we were trying to make it our own song, if that makes sense, through the remix. I think we got the whole story there with the various verses and stuff like that. I think that, to be fair, a lot of the story was told through the foley as well, such as the phone vibrations, as well as the cameras, going around the stereo field. And the vocals as well, like in later stages, were also like the talking was ruminating from left to right of stereo field. The post-production was tight. We were being very creative with that, and I have to appreciate that. But the track itself, at 3 minutes 03, I also need to mention, is quite well fleshed out there. We have the rolling action, and then we have intro motif, and then we come into like the hook and some verses and stuff like that. We get into the main sort of beef of the song there. Again, we have the main instruments being the drums, the bass parts, there are some synth parts, and that's enough. Like, this fits neatly within a 2 to 4 minute sweet spot for a lot of compositions. If you go shorter than 2 minutes, sometimes you're missing context to further understand a piece of what it's about. Longer than 4 minutes, if stuff is too similar, harmonically, like rhythmically and stuff, you're going to need to spice it up in order to retain interest. We were right in the center here. It works incredibly well as a single. And I think that if I was to just talk about a few of the instruments that I appreciated within this, I thought the drums, with their relative simplicity, just the power of that chord no groove pushing us forward there, kind of working in time with at the end we had the foley of like the person kind of walking with heels. I thought that was pretty slick. It works well for that. You could kind of also imagine this music maybe being at a fashion show or something like that. I think in addition to that, the bass lines are slick. They were full sounding. Again, they were very sort of similar to kind of bass tones and synths that you'd expect, like 808s from like the genre. They rolled with the root notes of those chords there, or those harmonies or pads we had, those kind of misty reverb, so like kind of laden synth pads we had on in the mid-range, but they were very loyal to the root notes there, and they segged well with the drums neatly side-chaining them. The synth pads that we had were minimal. There's like a 3-note bass line for a lot of it with some slight variations occasionally, but like it was like sort of confident enough with its triad formulations without any extensions on the upper end that it was simple to sort of understand and digest. It sounded cool. The sounds were kind of dope. It kind of sounded a little bit sort of like sinister and ominous with like the racy kind of stylings of it, but I think it was still stylistically and texturally cohesive. There were some lead parts, like there were some interesting sequences that we had there which were kind of fun as occasionals there. I don't think they were ever trying to pull too much focus away from the vocals. They were sort of more sub-layers. But in the same respect, I have to appreciate the fact that they were there at all. It's just variation and variety, including, again, the extra Foley bits there. There was a separation between like the verses and choruses, and like at the end there was more of an instrumental break where you could kind of appreciate the actual backing behind it slowly kind of fading out and becoming more minimalist over time there, just to kind of wind things down with a natural bell curve. And it was cool, man. We didn't do too much with things individually. It was how we stacked and arranged them within the frequency spectrum as well as the stereo field that made things really special. The overall theme, though, it was meant to, like, how do I describe funk, right? It kind of, as I understand it, funk is like kind of driving music. Like you kind of, a lot of it is kind of like street racing kind of music and stuff like that. It's got that kind of doof, doof, doof. It's like, I feel like I'm kind of getting older, But to summarize, it's meant to sound cool, like assertive, authoritative, like trendy, fashionable there, being a little bit edgy maybe with some of the kind of grittier tones to it. We're not trying to make it sound too pristine or polished there. There's a bit of a lower mid-range resonance there to really articulate the bass tones and subs. You know, there's a bit of brightness that maybe comes from the vocal parts, but aside from that, it's meant to those mids and lows. And because of that, it seems like you're kind of in that mire, kind of thugging alongside them, if that makes sense. And I vibe with that. I think that the aesthetic was consistent throughout there. We didn't have any massive twists or turns there. Again, we relied on more traditional major minor triads there with a more predictable key signature and sort of movement through those melodies and harmonies. A lot of the variation being within the vocal parts and the way they sort of structured and phrased themselves. But yeah, it was great. Ultimately, I just feel like, again, you're at a fashion show. It was kind of like, it's not Gucci. There's a specific brand which does a lot of gothic stuff, and I think that's kind of the brand I think of when I listen to this. That kind of aesthetic will work well there. But moving past the theme there and how I feel it equates to stuff within, like, that everything just works at this point. It's the studio recording, mixing, and mastering that is the icing on the cake. From, again, the spoken word part at the start with people going around the stereo field and it sounding like a conversation, to the gradual build of the kicks and basses and everything with the kind of the vocal parts moving into the main part of the song to pay homage to the original bit there, with their own kind of effort being put in immediately to show the differentiation there. You have a track where ultimately the vocals are nice and present in the mix despite the synthesization and modulation there. The synths, bass, and drums are firmly and neatly stacked within the free spectrum and stereo field with no resonant frequencies. Things are just really well niched. There's movements of Foley parts between the left and right of the stereo field, thorough exploration of the left and right sides of the cans and speakers, which makes it more of an immersive experience because you're kind of interested in wondering where things are going to go next. Again, the Foley parts also mixed in quite neatly in a way that doesn't disassociate or make you wonder why it's there in the first place. It relates to what's happening lyrically while still fitting contextually with the instrumentation now. There is dynamic range to this. Thing's not the same loudness all the time. We're not squeezing it, but it's still nice and loud. So the bus, the bus compression and limiting is handled well. I mean, effectively, I'm just really impressed with this as a first impression from, Cyrus Music, Cyrus Fire, their Phonk remix of this track from Britney Manson titled Fashion. And hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show them some love via their various social medias and a YouTube page, and stay cool, stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as either help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I will catch you in the next review. Spiderhands out.